Greetings, my peoples, and welcome to this week's episode of Vinyl Douche ASMR. If you like listening to someone talk about albums in a relaxing way, then like and subscribe. So every week we do another album, and this week we are covering the Fat Boys. This is like a treat for me, anyway. I don't know if a lot of people outside of New York City and just sort of outside of hip-hop, I'm sure anyone like in their 40s will probably remember the Fat Boys. But, for my generation here in New York City, and hip-hop in general, the Fat Boys were huge. They had 3 movies come out, and they had a, I guess, relatively short but really big career in the early days of the pop, or the first sort of pop iterations of hip-hop in mainstream. They came from I guess at that point it wasn't really an underground scene. So let's sort of just step back a bit and get back into the story of these guys. So the Fat Boys are made up of Prince Marky D, whose real name was Mark Morales, Damon Kulrocksky Wimbley, and Darren Bufflove Robinson. So another interesting thing about the Fat Boys is that Prince Marky D Morales was Puerto Rican, so it's also some of the earliest contributions that Latinos had in hip-hop. Prince Marky D was one of the first, at least on a sort of big stage. Puerto Ricans were definitely part of the beginning of hip-hop. It's definitely and should be always known as an art form that was created by black people, but Puerto Ricans were sort of right next to them, helping hip hop happen in the very early days, because Puerto Ricans and blacks in New York City, we occupy basically the same space, and we have since before the First World War. So in the late 70s, we're Latinos and blacks were side by side, but it's sort of it's become lately a sort of argument, at least on the internet, that a lot of people are saying that Latinos weren't part of hip hop, at least the beginning of it, and it's a crazy notion. In 1983, a man named Charles Settler wanted to start his own label called Tin Pan Apple, and he decided to throw this huge citywide talent contest in New York City, and he got Coca-Cola to sponsor him, and WBLS, which is a really big radio station here in New York, they were all involved, and it was every borough, as far as the 5 boroughs in New York City are concerned, had a sort of playoffs, and it all culminated at Radio City Music Hall on May 23rd, 1983, and the Fat Boys, who were then known as the Disco 3, won the whole thing, sort of unexpectedly. So at that point, they were called the Disco Three, and Stetler took them on tour in Europe, and they would finish shows really late at night, and the only places that were open to eat were fast food places like Burger King, McDonald's, and etc. So they gained weight, and with that, they had sort of a new look. They realized they all gained weight, and they rebranded, and they named themselves the Fat Boys, and they had a whole sort of rebranding night at Webster Hall in New York City. Roseland Ballroom at New York City, which unfortunately isn't around anymore. Settler, eventually introduced them to Curtis Blow, which was a huge, another big rapper at the time, and he started, producing them as far as their sound is concerned, and was really big in shaping their sound. And Curtis Blow is named as one of the producers of this album. So, yeah, this was the start of the Fat Boys, rise to stardom. And they were, kind of, if you listen to the music, it's a little gimmicky. It's, the rhymes are, they're maybe what you would consider a bit simpler, but it's hip hop. You listen to it and you get into it. If you like hip hop, and what I like about the album is that it's, you listen to it and it sounds, the beats, and it sounds a lot like house music. And one of the big claims to fame the Fat Boys had was their beatboxing. And they would rhyme over beatboxing, and, at one point beatboxing was considered a huge part of hip hop, and, it's not very much anymore. But they helped cultivate that sound. And Jailhouse Rap was on this album, and Fat Boys, I believe, was a song that they performed on this film called Crush Groove, which came out in, I believe, 1985. And Crush Groove was one of the first hip-hop movies, and I believe it was Russell Simmons. And that had, like, every rapper of the time in it. And Fat Boys were, they were prominent in it. And that led to, like, a sponsorship eventually with Swatch. And that led to their movies. They had, like, 3 movies. And their further albums went gold, so, Fat Boys were huge. And this is the record that started for them. Yeah, I can't really find information on where it was recorded, or any information on the cover, actually, which is definitely got some graphics works on there. But it was received pretty well. The album, it reached. Let's see, on the Billboard 200, reached number 48, and number 6 on the R&B and hip hop charts. And this album went gold way back in '85, so a year after it was released, it reached gold status. So good for the Fat Boys. Back cover, let's see if there's any information. If you look at the thanks, you got some names like Afrika Bambaataa, which it's a little problematic nowadays. Run DMC, and definitely one of their engineers or producers, who goes by the name of DMX, not the DMX from the late 90s, but DMX who work with Run DMC, also worked on this album. Let's see. Oh, okay, good. So front cover photos was Frank Giraldi, and the back cover photos were taken by Steve Friedman, and Linda West designed the cover. Let's see. Yeah, Curtis Blow also put some vocals down. And yeah. Alright, let's look at the album. Yikes. Okay. So, start off with Jailhouse Rap, which was a big single. Stick'em, which also was actually the song that they won the competition at Radio City with. And number 3 is Can You Feel It, which is another big single. And the second side, we have a title track, which is Fat Boys. Number 2, The Place to Be. Number 3, Human Beatbox. And number 4, Don't Dog Me. And guess something can be said about the name Fat Boys, which, I don't know if it would be considered like offensive nowadays, but I mean, if you yourself consider yourself fat and calling yourself fat, I don't know if that's considered offensive, but yeah. Alright, let's get a dust cover on this. This album belonged to a DJ, so probably got a lot of play back in the 80s. So it's not in the best condition. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a bunch of high school kids outside. Maybe I should yell out the window about how I'm doing an ASMR video. Sure, that'll be well received. other side now. It's going to rip the cover. That should be enough. Okay, folks, there you have it. 1984's Fat Boys by the Fat Boys. A relic and pioneering force in hip hop. Alright, thanks for watching. See you next week.